Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. As you have no doubt heard by now, the WGA and the AMPTP finally agreed on a new 3-year contract. The deal was announced on September 24th, but the details didn't really start to become public until later. What I found interesting, though, was what has now been reported to have occurred behind the scenes between WGA reps and several major studio heads. When the strike began way back on May 2nd, 2023, as I had talked about in a video that I had released at the time, the two sides were incredibly far apart on numerous issues that the writers wanted addressed in a new contract. Then, when the AMPTP made a public contract offer in August, that only upset the WGA membership who scoffed at it. But things apparently began to change after that incident occurred. The back-channeling had apparently started to pick up steam after the WGA strike passed the 60-day mark, and actors joined writers on picket lines in July. At that pivotal point, Chris Kaiser and David Goodman, who are co-chairs of the Writers Guild of America Negotiating Committee, began having numerous conversations both by phone and in person with key executives that influenced the course of the negotiations. After 146 days on strike, the WGA and AMPTP came to a tentative 3-year agreement on the evening of September 24th. But weeks before negotiations resumed, Kaiser and Goodman had met with Sony Pictures Entertainment chairman and CEO Tony Vinciquerra at the latter's home. And I'm not sure if I pronounced his name correctly. Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos did his own outreach, and so did other C-suitors. Before and after Labor Day, Kaiser had telephone conversations with Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav and Disney CEO Bob Iger, the two executives who had become the face of quote-unquote corporate greed for those on picket lines that finally led to the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, or AMPTP, to resume formal negotiations on September 20th. In the days leading up to that meeting, long telephone conversations that Kaiser held separately with Zaslav and Iger helped convince the management side that it was time to make a fresh move. Instead of one Lew Wasserman-esque industry figure emerging from the den to serve as a peacemaker, the WGA and AMPTP were brought together in a hard-fought deal after weeks of private conversations among guild leaders and executives. The stalemate wasn't broken by any one meeting or ultimatum, but the cumulative effect of many frank discussions of what it would take to end the impasse, which became even more fraught after the actors went on strike on July 14th. And I had released a video about that too at the time. WGA West President Meredith Steen, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, and several WGA negotiating committee members with deep industry relationships also played a part. Throughout the strike, insiders said the WGA team was extremely disciplined in channeling discussions of significance through Kaiser and Goodman. In August, it was a conversation between Kaiser and Zaslav that helped bring about the first in-person sit-down between Kaiser, Goodman, Steen, and WG West chief negotiator Ellen Stutzman with a quartet of top executives, Iger, Zaslav, Sarandos, and NBC Universal's Donna Langley, at West LA's Lux Hotel on August 22nd. That executive foursome ultimately led management in the final negotiations that produced the September 24th Accord. Kaiser said, quote, "There have been conversations amongst us and the CEOs essentially all the way through this negotiation. There were periods when it didn't happen, but most specifically, from the point at which the actors went on strike, those ongoing conversations with the CEOs were absolutely central," unquote. But that August 22nd meeting didn't actually go too well at the time because, by multiple accounts, the WGA group left the August 22nd meeting feeling as if they'd been given a stern lecture from the top brass about the terms of the package the AMPTP had presented to the Guild on August 18th. And that was the package that I had mentioned earlier in the video that writers scoffed at. The executives, however, left the meeting with a dawning realization about some shortcomings of that offer, which had further infuriated rank-and-file WGA members. Quote, They said it was full of loopholes, and they were right in some cases, unquote, said a source with firsthand knowledge of the meeting. The strength of the communication between Kaiser and key execs were already moving the sides toward a resumption of negotiations after Labor Day, even before the WGA began to face stronger internal pressure from a strain on its most highly paid members. As if on cue, months into the strike, rumblings of showrunners and seasoned writers restless for answers on the guild's strategy for closing a deal became loud enough to leak out from private WhatsApp and Facebook groups. But Goodman flatly rejects the suggestion that restless showrunners swayed the WGA's focus or negotiating strategy, saying, quote, "The pressure was only the responsibility of making the deal the membership went on strike for. We did talk to showrunners, but the idea that we felt pressure from them to get in the room and make a deal, it's just not true. Because the only way we could make the deal was when the companies were ready to make the deal," unquote. But while the guild dealt with that outburst of internal politics, plans to resume negotiations were actually taking shape. On September 14th, Kaiser placed a call to Zaslav. The Warner Brothers Discovery chief was eating dinner at a Manhattan restaurant, but stepped outside to take the call. And the day before, Zaslav was at CNN headquarters at Hudson Yards when he ducked out of Christine Amanpour's 40th anniversary party to speak with Kaiser by phone. After back-to-back conversations, Zaslav got the message loud and clear that it was time to get back to the table. So on September 18th, the WGA negotiating committee emailed the membership to say it would imminently sit down with the AMPTP, having created a, quote, "confirmed schedule to bargain this week," unquote. And that was apparently the first time that the word bargain had been used in an official guild communication during the strike. And what did the WGA get? In part due to the steadfast solidarity and sacrifice that the WGA members had maintained, the WGA achieved almost everything that they had originally sought, from a new model for streaming residuals to AI guardrails and minimum staffing guarantees. On September 20th, industry observers were pleasantly surprised when the executive foursome showed up in person at AMPTP headquarters in Sherman Oaks, as it was a strong signal that management was ready to wheel and deal. The side spent 8 hours going over nitty-gritty details about the use of AI, screenwriter fees, mind-numbing residual formulas, and more. Among the executives, according to observers in the room, Iger and Langley repeatedly demonstrated their encyclopedic knowledge on all aspects of the production process. Sarandos was naturally the go-to source on streaming-centric issues, of which there were many. And Zaslav played the coach role to help keep the group focused on the urgency to get to the finish line. This time around, the tone in the room was different, and it was described as civil, according to 4 sources with knowledge of the meetings. By Thursday at lunchtime, the producers and writers were finding common ground. On the matter of residuals, the studios and streamers agreed to pay out performance-based bonuses based on how many of their total active subscribers watch a film or series in its initial 90 days on the platform. And the fact that the writers actually got the studios and streamers to agree to anything regarding streaming residuals was remarkable. Kaiser credits the executive foursome for doing their homework before the September 20th sit-down. Kaiser said, quote, "The CEOs had done quite a bit of work before we got back into the room. When talks broke off, they had said no to any kind of compensation attached to streaming transparency. By the time we got back into the room, it was clear that they had heard us and made a proposal that became the basis of what we negotiated ultimately into the contract. The first time ever for a bonus for the shows that hit certain benchmarks in streaming. That's an example of how they were responsive," unquote. But the biggest threat to derailing the momentum emerged the following day. On September 21st, the executives were back in Sherman Oaks for another full day of talks, and by late afternoon, the management side was feeling optimistic that a deal was in sight. Shortly before 5 p.m. on Thursday, the executives sat for presentations on AI, one of the last matters to be resolved, before breaking for an early dinner. When they reconvened afterward, the WGA surprised the executives with a term sheet with deal points that had not been discussed with the executives. Iger and Zaslav, according to sources, didn't hide their frustration. The executives who are accustomed to high-stakes deal-making felt this was a reversal of the good faith that had been genuinely building between the sides. There were also renewed tensions around the WGA's demands to honor the strikes of sibling unions and to take steps to not return to work until the AMPTP completes a deal with the actors' union. The executives walked out of the meeting at around 7:30 p.m., but they also let it be known that they were prepared to meet in person again the next day. By 10 p.m. on September 21st, the WGA reached out and a third day of talks was set for September 22nd. Encouraging signs were met with cautious optimism as the WGA negotiating committee urged members to turn out strong to picket on September 22nd. But word of mouth had spread of the Thursday night surprise, which was that the sundown start of the Yom Kippur holiday on September 24th had become a soft target set as an unofficial deadline to reach a deal or once again retreat. As one WGA member had told Variety on Friday, quote, "There is no tomorrow. If this thing implodes, where the F word do we go from here?" Unquote. Yet this person remained hopeful that this was the way that high-pressure negotiations go, saying, quote, "There's always that last-minute breakdown, and then cooler heads prevail," unquote. By September 23rd, the CEOs were no longer in the room, deferring to lawyers and negotiators on both sides to paper a tentative agreement. It was a frenzied day of rumors about progress and lack thereof, with worries coming from both sides that any deal might blow up because of the language around AI. On top of that, the WGA membership was inflamed that management used the terminology best and final offer for what they presented to negotiators that evening. But later that night, a joint statement from the Guild and AMPTP confirming plans to meet again September 24th did succeed in bringing down the temperature a bit. The sides connected by Zoom and conference calls in the late afternoon on Sunday, September 24th. And around 7:15 p.m. Pacific time, the victory message WGA members longed to receive landed in their inboxes from the negotiating committee. Quote, "What we have won in this contract, most particularly everything we have gained since May 2nd, is due to the willingness of this membership to exercise its power, to demonstrate its solidarity, to walk side by side, to endure the pain and uncertainty of the past 146 days, unquote. Despite the rocky road to the deal, Goodman and Kaiser also gave credit to Iger, Langley, Sarandos, and Zaslav for finally taking charge. Goodman said, quote, "There were moments that each one of them let it be known that they wanted this deal. We were happy that all of them recognized the importance of it," unquote. Kaiser said, quote, "The AMPTP requires consensus. Those four CEOs created a consensus on their side for the deal that you see," unquote. So now a tentative contract is in place, one that Guild members are expected to formally ratify during a 7-day voting period that ends on October 9th. Bob Iger was apparently spotted on Saturday having dinner with Paul McCartney at the Hollywood eatery La Dolce Vita and was overheard by a WGA member telling McCartney that they had, quote, "averted serious damage," unquote. And I can believe that, as did Goodman, who said, quote, "Our theory of the case was 100% right. Some of these companies could not ride out a strike. Despite the rumors being floated that this strike could go till next year, they needed a deal. We caused them pain. Once they realized they had to end it, they got serious and they made a great deal with us," unquote. This is how strikes often go. It's typically only when the company side starts to feel serious financial pain that they finally break down and negotiate to end a strike. So whether you like the writers or not, they did win a big victory with the Hollywood studios. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.